If you can't operate with absolute integrity, you can't build a trusting team. You can't show compassion or empathy, then people just won't follow you. These are the words of our guest today, Jim Carlough. And really what he's getting at is how the landscape of leadership has evolved from an authoritarian, task-driven approach to one that's centered on collaboration, empathy, and integrity. Today, him and I are going to discuss this question, and that is, what does it take to excel as a leader in today's complex world? A couple key takeaways that you're going to get out of today's episode. Integrity is non-negotiable. It is the foundation of all effective leadership. Without it, trust and long-term results are just simply impossible. You're going to take away that compassion and empathy drive results, believe it or not. Being attuned to the needs and struggles of your team isn't just nice, it's essential for retention, engagement, and real performance. And finally, the last takeaway is that leadership is a continuous journey. True leaders never stop learning, reflecting, adapting, and leadership begins when your feet hit the floor in the morning and continues until well after you leave your desk in the afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, Jim is a rock star guest. He's got extensive leadership experience with over 25 years of experience in the healthcare and technology sectors. He's an author of the book 6 Pillars of an Exemplary Leader, which distills decades of mentoring, team building, personal growth into actionable advice. He's a mentor and coach. He's focused on people development. And then finally, he has an innovative approach. Today, we're going to be talking about these strategies, stories, and honest reflections, and so much more. Now, before I hit play on the recording of the interview, I do want to remind you one last thing, and that is the Leader Growth Mastermind, your mentorship, your development community is open. Yes, come join us. Stop trying to figure this out on your own. It is the worst thing you can do as a leader. As someone who's led teams now for almost 25 years, I wish I had this resource for me when I was at a junior stage learning. And fact is, I'm still learning, and I wish I had this resource for me. And actually, I do, because I built it for you, which I benefit from too. That's the Leader Growth Mastermind. It is our exclusive community geared towards team leads and managers to help you crowdsource wisdom, elevate your leadership skills so that you too can build those peak performing teams that you're listening to. Okay? It is crucial peer support. If you're not getting it at your work today, then join us now. Zero hassle, zero risk. I have a 30-day double your money back guarantee. Yes, double it. Okay? And let me tell you, I am so confident that you will get so much out of this mastermind, then you won't leave. So check us out, leaddon'tboss.com/mastermind. Hit the link, join us, and join the call that I'm literally about to jump into. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for me. Let's dive into the interview. Are you ready for this? All right, let's do it. Welcome one, welcome all to the Peak Performance Leadership Podcast, a weekly podcast series dedicated to helping you hit peak performance across the 3 domains of leadership. Those being leading yourself, leading your team, and leading your organization. This podcast couples my 20 years of military experience as a senior Canadian Army officer with world-class guests to bring you the most complete podcast of leadership going. And for more, feel free to check out our website at movingforwardleadership.com. And with that, let's get to the show. Jim, sir, welcome to the show. So good to have you here today.
Well, I am glad to be here, Scott. It's been a great day so far, and I think we're going to finish it on a high note.
Oh, let's finish strong. I've had a bit of a day, so definitely want to finish strong here. Just the other day, we were chatting. before I hit record. We're a lot of similar ideas and ideologies and thoughts and stuff like this. But I'd love to pick your brain on, how do you see the leadership landscape today? I have my thoughts. I'd love to hear about your thoughts. How you see leadership, leaders, all those different aspects, how things are going today from your perspective.
So when I talk about today, I always think back to the way it was, or when I entered the workforce, and because to see that dichotomy is very interesting. So when I entered the workforce right out of college as a manager, managers and leaders were very authoritarian, military stylistic. This is what I want you to do today, Scott. Tomorrow, here are your activities that you're going to do. And Scott didn't have to think about what he had to do tomorrow, right? Somebody already mapped it out for him. Today, it's very different. In fact, I look back at how I lead people and teams today, and I feel like I have to reach back out to that first team I ever was manager of and apologize for the way I treated them. And it's not that I beat them with a stick. I didn't. It's just that I am not that person anymore. And so not only has the world evolved, leadership has evolved. Today it's very collaborative. People have their own autonomy to do their professional work in their way and be creative at it. They don't necessarily need to be, or I have found, and I'm in the technology space, they don't need to be micromanaged. You don't have to be a task. You don't, as a manager or leader, you don't need to be a taskmaster and just, hey, did you get item number 7 checked off your list today? And my style is very, very loose. I have a leader meeting once a week with my direct reports, and then every direct report has a one-on-one meeting. And that one-on-one meeting is their meeting to bring ideas, issues, opportunities, or whatever to me. And I'm a listener. And I may answer questions kind of like I'd answer your questions in this discussion. But it's very much led by the person who reports to me as opposed to me coming to it with an agenda. Does that help?
No, it absolutely does help. I'm curious what why you think the driving force behind this changes, because I 100% agree with you. I often talk about leadership today is about not having all the answers, but rather asking the right questions. And I think we're similar aligned in that regard and what you're saying. I'd love to hear, what your thoughts are and what's been driving this change from that, as you put it, to the actual military guy, that militaristic approach, to now, that collaborative approach.
I think it's just the evolution of, I want to say, human nature. And as we've evolved, and I can't pinpoint a time, where things just flipped. I think it really has been an evolution of a lot of different things. I think people's educational level, for one, has gone up. We have more people graduating college today than we did 40 years ago. I think the opportunity for learning is there. I think in the global space, we've had to be more competitive. So we've needed to be educated in that way to be able to respond on the world stage. And I think just as the world has become more complex, I think people have realized that you can get more juice out of the lemon by behaving differently. That by allowing people to use their creativity, you actually are able to grow and develop and probably hit higher levels, or at least that's what I have found. I've created some very, very high performing teams, and I've used the same model over the last 20, 25 years.
No, I hear you. I think one of the big drivers for me is just that people are becoming more and more specialized and as you said, educated. They're getting to know things at such a deeper level, or have the ability to get to know something at such a deeper level. And the world to me is becoming so much more complex than when I first started, right? And it's impossible for me to know everything. So I can't know everything. So I have to trust my team who are in charge of their various areas of my organization to be the specialists and know that stuff. And I'll ask the questions, but they're the ones that are going to have the answers because they run those teams.
You're right. And I often tell people, I don't have all the answers, but together we can help find the answers. I'm the same way. I don't need to be, and I'm often not the smartest person in the discussion or in the room. It's somebody else who has that expertise. But I know how to ask questions. And more importantly, for a leader, I know how to listen and actively listen. I once worked for a CEO. My weekly one on one with him was 1 hour during lunch, 1 day a week. And this is a true story. That entire time of that one on one meeting, he read the Wall Street Journal with it up in front of him. I am not kidding. And it was the oddest experience I ever had because I didn't feel like he was listening. And he would often say, I'm hearing every word you say, but I'm able to do these two tasks at the same time. I really wanted to just rip the paper away and say, but you're not even looking at me. How can you be actively engaged in the conversation when you have a distraction? It's sort of like the people today who have 6 computer screens, and you sit there and you watch them, and you're sitting in the Zoom meeting and they're going like this, and they're reading all of these 6 screens, and you can count every time their head stops, right? So there's screen 1, screen 2. I don't have 6 screens. I wouldn't be able to focus and function if I had that amount of, I want to call it interference, coming in from the outside. Anyway, I digress. Sorry about that.
No, I hear you. That CEO story is amazing. Wow.
I would love to tell you the person's name, but I am not going to do that.
No, that's fair. Yeah, yeah. We have a saying. So I'm actually in the Canadian Army. Do that by day, and we have a saying: "No names, no pack drill." So meaning that you don't say any names, and you don't basically slander anyone. So keep that to yourself. But it is a great story in a way of how not to be. I love those stories. I have those myself. I often talk about one where we had a former officer show up to one of our units as the commanding officer and basically destroy morale, destroy the teamwork, destroy everything because
Whoa.
they thought that they knew everything, right? And just absolutely destroyed the organization to the point where I was like, okay, I got days left here. It's time for me. Looking forward to getting out and doing something new, right? So we all have those. Unfortunately, we all have those stories, which is great for people like you and I because they keep us employed. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
I love the how we framed so far. Now you've gone ahead, you've written this book about 6 pillars of leadership from your perspective. I'd just love to know what caused that inspiration. How did you come up with hey, these are the 6? What was this trigger for you? Where did that come from for you to then turn around and write the book on it?
So that's a great question. It really happened over 25 years. For the last 25 years, ever since I got into the technology side of healthcare, when I entered it, I happened to be working for a company that had a great focus on developing people. And one of the things we had was a mentorship program. And every manager or leader like myself had to mentor somebody else in the organization that was labeled as a potential up and comer. And I had so much fun actually doing that. I started doing it on the outside for people who would, ask me, hey, can you give me advice on this? And, and I'd say, hey, would you like some coaching? And what I did is as I followed through and did this over the years, and I have one individual I've actually done it for 25 years. I don't know why he still puts up with me, but he does. But every time he runs into a business situation he's not used to, he'll pick up the phone and give me a call. But what I found in those 25 years was there were a set of characteristics that a lot of people were missing. And what I pointed to is a lot of people were great individual contributors. And somebody came and tapped them on the shoulder and said, hey, we're going to put you in management. And then put them in management, but there was nothing to give them to guide them on how to influence people or how to manage people or how to interact with people. And I noticed these traits. So about 2 years ago, I started thinking about retirement. And I said, I'm not the guy that can go fishing every day. As much as I like to fish, I have to be more active than that. So I said, maybe I'll write a book. And maybe I'll take my message and my leadership style and see if there's a market for it. So I started writing down all the characteristics that I could remember that all of the people were missing. It was like 15 or 18. And I said, wow, I can't write a book and ask people to implement 18 items. That's not possible. So I took the time to try to narrow it down as best I could to a smaller number. And it just happened to land on 6. And I then zeroed in on those 6 and said, okay, if I want to know about those 6, what's the best way to teach people about them? So I described the pillar, what it does, what it means, tell a personal story of something in my life that happened that emphasizes that pillar. But then I also came up with a list of leaders that are in the world today that use that characteristic in their leadership style, so that the person reading the book not only had actionable steps, but they could also go read about somebody else who in America or some other country uses that characteristic in their management style and encourage them to read about them. And I'd include a paragraph or two about how they lead or manage and leave it at that with a reference for where I got that information from. And people can go and look up that CEO per se. But that's how it evolved. And so the book came out in December, and I've been promoting it like this since then. And it has been quite a ride in a short period of time.
That's awesome. And I really liked, that reflection that you did, like, whoa, 18. Because it can seem daunting, right? When you get this big list or a long, big thing, and it's like really daunting. Like, oh well, I think my natural reaction back in the day would have immediately been like, well, obviously it's not for me.
That's exactly what I thought. I said the first person that looks at that table of contents and sees 25 chapters or whatever, with some introductory stuff and some ending stuff, would say,
right.
I can't. Is this a college class? I'm not taking an exam. I mean, so I wanted something that would be useful, helpful, and implementable.
Yeah. So what do you run down the 6 pillars for us, and just like super high level one, a little quick blurb for each one, and then what I'd like to do is maybe dive deep into like maybe 2, max 3 of them, depending on how the conversation goes. How's that sound?
That sounds perfect. That's perfect. So, pillar number 1, which I call the non-negotiable pillar. There is no other pillar to me that's absolutely required in leadership today, and that's integrity. And I think more so than ever, we need it in our leaders. Those leaders can be local civic leaders or corporate leaders, but I think we've gotten away from that integrity line. Integrity to me is so important that it drives every decision that somebody has to make. And if you can't operate with absolute integrity, you can't build a trusting team. You can't show compassion or empathy. People won't believe you. And you certainly aren't going to create followers of your vision. You're going to be creating a team that is a short-term team and eventually will leave the organization because they're disenchanted with the vision, because they don't believe in the leader, they can't follow the leader, or they can't interact with the leader. So that's number 1. I follow that with compassion and empathy. And those are very, very different pillars. A lot of people confuse them. And a lot of them consider them the same thing, but they're not. In the case of empathy, you really are putting yourself in that person's shoes and really feeling what they feel to try to respond to it. And compassion, you're not necessarily putting yourself in their shoes, but you're actually trying to guide them to help them. You can't give them the answer, but you may be able to point them in the right direction. And so to me, they're very, very different, but equally important if you're going to lead a team of any size, of any size. Then there's focus and stability. And again, they sound similar, but they're very, very different. Focus is having a laser object kind of view of what the goal line is and where the goal line is. And then you can plan to how you can get across that goal line. But if your focus is on 5 different things, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to get across 5 different goal lines. Now, you could take that goal and break it down into some subcomponents, but what is that singular focus that you want to do? I'll give you an example. Jeff Bezos started out selling books online, realized I can do this with virtually any product. I can distribute, I can bring the store to people's computer screen and deliver it to their home. I can't tell you the last time I was in a mall. I'm very serious. I cannot tell you the last time I was in a mall. That singular focus, he almost got sidetracked a couple of times because he had some very lean years in the early going. And I even tell a story about in the book one time they had a bad, I don't know if it was a rating or a number of complaints about their customer service. So what he did is he took a desk and he put it in the middle of the floor of their customer service department. Now, today they're worldwide. He couldn't do that today. But he put it in the middle there, and he sat there, and he listened, and he observed until he could figure out what he needed to fix. That's focus. And the last one is stability, or not the last, second to last one is stability. And stability is not just the laser focus, but also being able to behave the same way every time you do something and have a methodical approach to it. And then the very last pillar is humor. And people always say humor. And I have to caution them, it's not being a stand-up comedian. You know, you're not going to be telling jokes at the water cooler that you heard on the TV show last night. It's really using humor in certain situations and I use it to refocus conversations. I use it to diffuse tense situations where people may, be argumentative as opposed to trying to come to agreement. And I also use it to kick off meetings or discussions to try to get everybody kind of humanized and typically relaxed to have that conversation. So those are the 6. They're not, it's not rocket science, but implementing them is difficult. It's hard to teach somebody compassion. It's hard to teach somebody empathy. It's hard for people it's a lot harder to get laser focused than, in what you're doing. So that's at a high level, but let's dig deeper.
Yeah, no, for sure. Absolutely. First off, love the 6. Can see how you came up with them and as in why they're important. And I definitely want to go deeper on the first one. I like you said, it's absolutely crucial, right? And integrate it's one of the cornerstones of leadership alongside trust. So we have to dive deeper. And I'm going to tell a quick little story, a local story. So my local mayor recently was been found guilty. I don't know if guilty is the right word, but anyway, we'll go with guilty by the town council to have I think 8 cases of breach of trust, or right, like it's pretty significant. And it's like and the first thing in my mind is like, where's his resignation? We're like, sorry, you gotta step down. Like, and actually my follow-on effect was like they suspended him for 3 months without pay. Okay, but like, why didn't they move the fire? So we're not here to talk about that, but it's definitely linked. But my question, out of the gate is like, how do these issues occur when leaders know that this is super important? Like this is, this is important. When you're in these roles that you have to act at that higher standard, but yet we find so many cases out there where lack of judgment is terrible.
Part of me wants to say selfishness, but it's funny you say a mayor. I'll tell you how I got introduced to integrity, and it happened the year I graduated college. That year, I ran for the local city council in the town I grew up in, and I won. Youngest person ever to be elected to city office in this small town in New Jersey. And I was reelected 3 years later. So it wasn't like I was a fluke, right? I did good enough to get reelected. Right after the election, a few days after the election, the city administrator called me and asked me if I'd come sit down and talk to him. So I went in to sit down and talk to him, and I didn't know what the topic was. This was before email and all of this stuff where you could send an agenda to somebody. And I sat down with him and we were chit-chatting for a bit. And he said, well, I bet you want to know why I called you here. I said, that would be helpful. He said, well, I want to ask you a favor. And right away, I thought, I'm now in politics. I'm getting asked for my first favor. And I was like, okay, Don, what can I do for you? He said, I want you to make me a promise. And here's what I want you to do. Every night when you go to bed and when you put your head on the pillow, right before you close your eyes to go to sleep, I want you to ask yourself this one question. And that question is, did I do anything today for my own self-benefit that was at the expense of another individual, group of individuals, or organization? He said, if you can say no to that question, you can sleep peacefully. If you say yes to that question, you need to immediately evaluate what you did, whether you can unwind it, and how to never repeat that again. I have asked myself that question every night since November 1983. And I've never answered it with a yes.
That's 42 years and counting of that question.
That's
Almost.
42 years and counting, or whatever the math works out.
41 and change.
But 41 and change, but I've asked myself that question every night. And I've instilled that in my kids as well. And everyone that has ever worked for me, if they were to say, if you were to ask them, what's the one driving thing that you'll always get out of Jim, and it'll be integrity.
No, I think I honestly don't know how to follow that up now, and I think that shows how well you just wrap that up, that pillar up. For listeners, it's so crucial, and like that's a fantastic question. Look at it from your perspective of your team and your organization. So here at the podcast, I talk about 3 domains of leadership. 3 being leading yourself, i.e., you as a leader. Second being leading your team, the individuals, the Jims, the Scotts, the Janes, the Sallys, and then the final one is leading your organization, which is the institutional aspect of it. They all tie together, of course. So if you can go ahead and sleep at night and ask yourself that, reflect on those 3 domains, no doubt you will lead with integrity moving forward. So let's jump ahead. I'd love to jump ahead with compassion, because this one I find is often I don't know, contentious. Let's go with contentious point, because a lot of people out there feel like, oh, there's no place for compassion in leadership per se. Like it's about results, which, okay, yep, you do have to achieve results for sure. But at the same time, you don't need to destroy people to achieve them. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on compassion.
So compassion, to me, I think a leader has to be very aware of their team and the behaviors that they routinely exhibit, solely for when you can figure out when that individual is having an off day. I'm not going to say bad day, but an off day. And if you can figure out when they're having an off day, it gives you an opportunity to intercede to try to help resolve whatever is going on in that person's life that's causing them to be off. Maybe it's a sick child, could be a sick spouse, or somebody in a relative had just passed away. And then you can offer, you know, you can console them or give them some of your own knowledge or how you've dealt with situations that were similar. You can't solve it for them, but you can help them get over it. If it's a sick dog, hey, I got a good vet's name if you don't have a good vet's name. If it's a sick child, have you gotten the child to the doctor? If not, why don't you go home and take care of that now? A simple act of kindness to extend to them to help them resolve the problem that they're facing, and give them the opportunity to go do that. And, I've often seen people at work who have been working their tail off, and you see them one day and they just look exhausted. And I've gone up to them and I'd say, "Are you having a good day?" And they're just like, "I'm exhausted." And I've said, "Look, you've really been burning the candle at two ends here, and that's my fault. And so what you're going to do is you're going to turn your computer off, and you're going to go take the rest of the day off and go do something fun." Or a couple of years ago, I had someone who worked for me who was a single mom, and it was 3 weeks before school was to go back in. And we were having a weekly one-on-one, and I just happened to ask, "How's the summer going?" And she said, "Well, to be honest with you, I haven't spent a single day with my son, and he goes back to school in 3 weeks." This was on a Wednesday. I said, "Okay, you're not taking paid time off, but you're not to come to work tomorrow or Friday, and you go do something with your son for the next 4 days." That's all I did. And she then said, "Well, I can't do that." And I was like, "Well, why not?" She said, "I've got a couple of deliverables. Can I do it next week?" I said, "Only if you promise me that you're not going to negotiate to change it to another 2 days somewhere else down the road, because all you're doing is kicking the can. You're not solving the problem." But that simple gesture gave her the opportunity to spend 4 wonderful days with her son before he went back to school. It's that easy.
It is that easy, like it really isn't rocket science, yet so many people just get hung up and they're like, well, what if others hear about it?
And
You know?
I don't worry about what others, to me, that's not my problem. My
Hmm.
problem, I'm solving my problem is I've got somebody who's very unhappy and very stressed out because they've not been able to spend quality time with their child because of me and the amount of work I've given them, potentially, or we as an organization have given them. So I have the ability to solve that. If another leader in another department hears about it and wants to complain to HR can come and talk to me, but I'm going to give them the same response. I'm killing this person with work. I owe them this, because otherwise they're going to burn out, and or their kid is going to revolt and hate their mother. It's a simple act of kindness.
And, to me, it's like, okay, let's look at the second and third order effects here. And right away, it's like, well, she now feels valued. She now feels heard. She now feels like she matters and you care, which is awesome, right? So, how many companies out there are still struggling with retention issues and still struggling with recruitment issues? Like it's still a struggle. Yet you demand day in day out, burn the oil, go go go, and don't complain to me. Be happy you got a job. Well, you know what? Like I can find another job pretty quick.
Well, and that's the thing. It's going to be harder to replace somebody and train somebody new when you treat somebody like that and they walk out the door, and then you think it's just their own attitude or fault when you were the cause of it. I mean, I've worked for some people in my lifetime. I'm sure everybody's had a bad leader now or then. And, you learn from that. You don't want to be that person. And I'm a pretty demanding person as well. And I do expect to exceed our goals and expectations that we set collectively. and we'll always strive for them, and we'll always know where that goal line is. But every now and then, you've got to recognize when somebody's in a not good spot. And it doesn't take long. If you really know your people, it doesn't take long to figure that out when those days happen.
No, this is fantastic, Jim. I'd love to dive into, each pillar deeper and deeper with you. But I definitely want to leave a taste in the audience's mouth so that they can go and get the book, have a read of it, and go deeper themselves. Before we wrap up, though, there's obviously 4 more pillars we haven't touched, but with the stuff we have talked about today so far, is there anything that we haven't touched that you feel like should be mentioned or emphasized on before we wrap up?
The only thing I would tell people is that if you decide that you want to be a leader, manager, leader, director, whatever the title is, know that it's a 24/7 job. I once had somebody ask me, so leadership, when does that begin? Does that begin when you sit down at your desk? No, it begins when your feet hit the floor when you get out of bed in the morning. And it doesn't stop till you put your feet up in the bed at night. And it also is ever evolving. It's a learning process that doesn't end. And you have to understand that. I am always reading something, whether it's a leadership book or a blog posts or listening to podcasts, and just picking up little pieces of things that, hey, that's interesting. I need to try that. But it's a forever learning process.
I talk about leadership as an ideology. It's not something we do, but something rather we are who we are and what we are.
Correct. And I view our role now, Scott, is our job is to bring up the next set of leaders. That's what I do. And so that's what my focus is. How do I help the next generation of leaders?
Awesome. Jim, this has been fantastic. For the audience out there, where can they find you, follow you? It's all about you. Shameless plug. Have at it now.
So, you can find me Facebook. You can find me Instagram. You can find me YouTube. I have a website. It's very simple, jimcarlough.com. So it's Jim, my first name, no spaces, no dot, and then my last name, CarlougH.com. You can buy my book from my website. You can also buy it from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and some other outlets as well. But if you get it off my site, I can ship it right from my house. You don't have to wait for it to be printed because it is print on demand or self-publishing. But and the price doesn't vary. But if I send it to you, I'll sign it first. But it's available there. You can subscribe to a newsletter on my website as well, and be watching, because I plan, and I haven't said this to anyone first, so Scott, your audience will be the first to hear it. I'm going to start producing a one-on-one coaching program that's based on these principles, because I think I found a way to be able to do it in a broader way, and start to build that as another part of what I'm bringing to the market.
Awesome. And for the listeners, always, it's easy. Just go to leaddon'tboss.com/the episode number in digits. And the links are there in the show notes, along with everything else that you can find regarding this episode. So, Jim, again, sir, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule. It's been great to have you on. No doubt the audience got some out of it, and I'm sure they'll be checking out the book, because it is a great read. Go ahead and check it out. And again, thank you.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap for this episode, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting the Peak Performance Leadership Podcast. But you know what you could do to truly support the podcast? And no, that's not leaving a rating and review. It's simply helping a friend. And that is helping a friend by sharing this episode with them if you think this would resonate with them and help them elevate their performance level, whether that's within themselves, their teams, or their organization. So do that. Help me, help a friend, win-win all around. And hey, you look like a great friend at the same time. So just hit that little share button on your app, and then feel free to fire this episode to anyone that you feel would benefit from it. Finally, there's always more. There's always more lessons around being the highest performing leader that you can possibly be, whether that's for yourself, your team, or your organization. So why don't you subscribe? Subscribe to the show via movingforwardleadership.com/subscribe. And until next time, lead, don't boss, and thanks for coming out. Take care now.